For 2 years, my millionaire son sent me $43,000. And I never saw a single dollar. When he asked about the lake house he'd given me, I had no idea what he was talking about. The truth. His wife had stolen everything. But that's not even the worst part. If you've ever felt invisible, betrayed by family, or wondered how far greed can go, you need to hear this story. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss stories like this one. My name is Margaret Sullivan, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 65, and for the past 12 years, I've worked nights as a janitor in the county courthouse here in Asheville. Most people don't notice me. Maybe that's why I notice everything. The way coffee stains linger in the carpet of the judge's chambers. The way people walk a little faster past the family courtrooms. And the way my own son, once a boy who used to kiss my forehead and promised to build me a big house by the lake, now sends polite holiday texts and financial updates instead of hugs. But on Thanksgiving morning he was coming to dinner. I spent all of Wednesday night baking the sweet potato casserole he used to beg for as a teenager. That morning, I ironed the same dress I'd worn for the last 3 holidays and put on lipstick that was 2 years past expired. My hands trembled a little while setting the table. Not from the arthritis, but because Brandon hadn't visited in 4 months, and I wasn't sure he still knew the layout of my kitchen. When he finally arrived, it was like the wind shifted. He stood in my doorway in a slate gray wool coat, holding a bottle of California Pinot, like he was stepping out of a magazine spread. His wife, Courtney, followed behind him in heels and perfume that didn't belong in a house with peeling linoleum floors. Dinner was stiff, but I'd expected that. We danced around safe topics. His company's expansion, Courtney's Pilates instructor, how unusually warm the fall had been. Then, just as I set the pumpkin pie down on the table, Brandon leaned back in his chair, fork suspended midair, and smiled. "So, Mom," he said. "How's the lake house? I haven't heard you mention it lately." My hands froze. The room went quiet, and in that silence, I knew something was terribly wrong. I didn't answer right away. The pie server hovered in my hand as I stared at Brandon, searching his face for some hint that he was joking. But there was no smirk, no glint of irony, just genuine curiosity in his eyes, like he honestly believed I'd been living in a lake house all this time. If this story is already giving you chills, hit that like button and let me know in the comments if you've ever experienced something similar. "What lake house?" I asked, slowly setting the server down on the table. He blinked. "The one near Cedar Ridge. The one I gave you 2 years ago for your birthday." Courtney shifted in her seat. Her fingers curled around the stem of her wine glass just a little too tightly. Then, without a word, she pushed back her chair and stood. "I just remembered," she said quickly. "I need to make a call about tomorrow's brunch." "Excuse me." She grabbed her phone and walked briskly toward the kitchen, heels clicking over worn vinyl tiles. I looked back at Brandon. "Honey, I never received a house. Not a single letter, not a key, nothing." His brow furrowed. "That's impossible. I had my assistant handle everything. The deed transfer, the paperwork. I even set up monthly payments. $1,500 a month for upkeep." I felt my chest tighten. $1,500 a month for 2 years. "You haven't been getting them," he said. I shook my head slowly. "I've been skipping prescriptions and wearing the same coat through 2 winters. Brandon's expression darkened. He stood abruptly, pulling out his phone and thumbing through emails. "No, this doesn't make sense. Have confirmation." Everything was processed. From the kitchen, Courtney's voice was suddenly hushed and hurried. I didn't need to hear what she was saying to know. My son had been sending money, and someone else had been taking it. Brandon was pacing now, phone in one hand, the other running through his hair the way he used to when he lost basketball games in high school. I stayed seated, both palms flat against the table, grounding myself. He finally stopped scrolling. "Here, look. This is from Jessica, my assistant. 2 years ago, she confirmed the deed was transferred to your name. And the payments, they were set to auto-deposit on the 1st of every month. That's $36,000, Mom. You never got any of it. I shook my head, but my eyes were already drifting toward the kitchen. I could still hear Courtney talking softly. Too softly, like someone trying not to be overheard. I want to see the paperwork, I said. Brandon nodded and tapped his screen. Jessica, can you send me copies of the original deed and the bank details for the transfers? Yes, all of it. When he hung up, we stood in silence for a moment, both of us listening. Courtney's voice had stopped. Not faded, stopped. That made my stomach sink. I got up slowly and stepped toward the kitchen. Courtney stood near the window, phone still in her hand, but her back was turned. Her shoulders were tense, unmoving. When she heard me behind her, she turned too quickly, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Everything okay? She asked, voice too light. Brandon appeared beside me, jaw clenched. Courtney, do you know anything about the Lakehouse paperwork? Her smile faltered. I might have helped with some things. Why? That was when I knew. It wasn't a clerical error. It was a theft. And the thief was standing right in my kitchen. Drop a comment below if you think you know what happened next. And please subscribe. This story is about to get even more shocking. Courtney didn't speak right away. Her lips parted like she was searching for the right lie, the one that would sound just believable enough to buy her time. But her eyes gave her away. They flicked between me and Brandon, calculating. There might have been a mix-up, she said finally. Maybe the mail didn't reach your place, or the bank got the wrong routing number. These things happen. Brandon stepped closer, his voice low. Cut the act, Courtney. My mother has been living on instant noodles while I've been sending her over $1,000 a month. Courtney's face flushed. I didn't know, she said quickly. I assumed everything was going through like you arranged. I mean, we've been so busy. And you were the one who suggested sending her money in the first place. Brandon snapped. You said she looked tired, that she could use the help. You volunteered to coordinate with Jessica. You pushed for the Lakehouse. Courtney's jaw tightened. For the first time she looked cornered. I stepped forward then, steadying my voice. Courtney, where is my house? The room went still. Even the hum of the refrigerator felt louder. She swallowed hard. My parents are staying there. Just temporarily. They needed a place after my dad lost his job, and it wasn't being used anyway. Wasn't being used, I repeated, because I didn't know it existed. Felt something crack. Not a scream, not a sob, just a clean break in my chest. All those months I'd spent freezing, rationing medication, telling myself to be proud of my son's success. And this woman had taken every ounce of it for herself. Brandon didn't speak. He just stared at Courtney like he was seeing her for the first time, like the edges of a picture he'd memorized were starting to peel away. He pulled out his phone again. I'm calling Jessica. Courtney lunged forward, reaching for his arm. Wait, please, Brandon. Let's talk first in private. Your mom's been through a lot already. This could just be a misunderstanding. But Brandon stepped back from her touch. No more secrets. No more delays. He pressed the speaker button. Jessica, he said, can you confirm the bank account we've been using to send monthly support to my mother? Then her voice came through, clear as glass. Yes, it's under the name Margaret Sullivan. Routing number ending in 4728. Set up in December 2 years ago. You requested all funds for your mother be redirected there. My breath caught. That's not my account. Mine ends in 0156. I've had it for 20 years. Jessica's voice hesitated. The change came from your wife. Courtney called and said your mother had switched banks. She gave us the new number. Brandon lowered the phone slowly. His face had gone pale. Courtney opened her mouth, but nothing came out. And the deed? Asked, barely able to speak. Jessica responded, still unaware of what was unfolding. Transferred to Margaret Sullivan on November 15th, 2 years ago. Document signed and mailed to the address provided. 847 Sycamore Lane, Unit 4B. I've never lived there, I said quietly. I've been at the same address for 10 years. Courtney turned away, pressing her fingers to her forehead like she could rewind time by closing her eyes, but it was too late. The truth had already stepped into the room, and it wasn't leaving. If you're as shocked as I was, smash that like button. And comment justice, if you think Courtney got what she deserved. The silence after Jessica hung up was thick enough to choke on. I sat down slowly, my knees suddenly unsure of themselves. Brandon stayed standing, motionless, as if moving would make it worse. Courtney backed herself against the counter, arms folded tight across her chest like armor. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she said, almost to herself. They were going to pay it back. I looked up. They? My parents, she whispered. They just needed a place to stay for a while, and then the bills started coming in and I thought I could manage it. You forged my signature, I said, the words bitter in my mouth. You opened a bank account in my name. You rerouted thousands of dollars that were meant to help me survive. And you thought what? That I wouldn't notice because I was too poor to fight back. Her mouth trembled. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. But you did, Brandon said sharply. You hurt both of us. His voice cracked, and I saw something shift in his face. The businessman mask fell away, replaced by the hurt son, the boy who used to sneak extra pie into my purse after Sunday dinners. I trusted you, he said. I believed you when you said you wanted to help take care of her. Courtney wiped her face with the sleeve of her sweater. I didn't know it would get so far. I thought your mom was fine. She never said anything. I almost laughed. Not out of humor but out of disbelief. You never asked. For 2 years she'd lived off my silence, and now she was drowning in it. That night Brandon stayed late. After Courtney left in tears, saying she needed space to think. He and I sat at the kitchen table long after the dishes were cleared. Neither of us touched the pie. He brought out his laptop, opened folders, emails, transfer receipts, every digital breadcrumb that proved what I now knew deep down. For 2 full years, every cent he tried to give me was siphoned away. And I had suffered in silence, believing he'd forgotten me. I studied the scanned deed. The signature said Margaret Sullivan, but it wasn't mine. The M was too wide. The S didn't loop. It was someone copying me. Not well, but just enough to fool a file clerk. This isn't how I sign my name, I said, tracing it with my finger. Brandon compared it to a birthday card I'd written him last year. The differences jumped off the screen once you knew where to look. She forged it, he whispered. We sat with that truth. When he pulled up the routing numbers, I recognized nothing. The bank wasn't even one I'd ever stepped into. Courtney had used my full name, my social security number, my address, then rerouted everything. Mom, he said, voice tight. This is identity theft. We need to go to the police. I nodded slowly, but something in me resisted moving too fast. Not because I had doubts, but because something told me this wasn't the end of it. Thieves like Courtney rarely steal once. They get good at it. And the better they get, the more invisible people like me become. I wasn't going to let that happen again. The next morning I called in sick for the first time in over a decade. Mrs. Rodriguez at the courthouse sounded surprised. You sure you're okay, Maggie? She asked. You've never missed a day. I'm fine, I lied. Just something personal. By noon, Brandon returned with a banker's box full of files. His laptop under one arm, and a face that had aged overnight. He spread everything across my dining table, the same table where Courtney had smiled at me over mashed potatoes like we were family. We started with the bank records. Every transfer, every note marked, for Mom. Each one sent on time, every month, all of them directed to the wrong account. I watched Brandon's jaw tighten with each transaction. There were extras too. $500 for glasses. $800 for dental work. $1,000 just because, around Christmas. She told me you'd cried over the cost of a crown, he said quietly. I didn't want you to feel embarrassed asking. I hadn't cried over a crown. I'd pulled my own molar in the bathroom with a pair of pliers and a bottle of bourbon. The total added up fast. Brandon ran the numbers with shaking hands. $43,000, he said. Covered my mouth. That was more than twice what I'd earned last year scrubbing courthouse floors. And that's just the money, he added. We still haven't factored in the house. Type unbelievable in the comments if this story has you speechless. Don't forget to subscribe for more true stories. We drove to the address Courtney had used for the fraudulent bank account. 847 Sycamore Lane, a run-down apartment complex with boarded windows and a mailbox stuffed with unopened envelopes. Unit 4B was vacant, just a ghost address. But Courtney had been very real, and she'd built a whole life off the wreckage of mine. We didn't stop at Sycamore Lane. After confirming the apartment was a decoy, we headed straight to First Horizon Bank, the institution tied to the fake account. I brought every piece of ID I owned, including my social security card, utility bills, and my voter registration. The banker, a young woman named Ashley, scanned through the profile, frowning as she clicked. Ma'am, this account's been active for just over 2 years, opened with a $50 deposit. All wire transfers since then. She turned the screen toward me. We have no record of you ever visiting this branch. I leaned in. Because I never have. She hesitated, then pulled the original signature card. It was the same imitation again. My name but not my hand. That's not me, I said. That's forgery. Ashley nodded slowly. This is a case of identity theft. I'm going to recommend you file a report immediately. We spent the next hour documenting everything. The bank account, the forged signature, the fraudulent mailing address. And then, just when I thought we'd seen it all, Brandon opened another folder. Courtney's tax filings, he said. She used your identity to claim dependency credits. Filed false returns and listed your income like you'd received the money. I stared at the forms, numb. So the IRS thinks I'm hiding income one never received. Yes, he said. And that could mean an audit or worse. It was no longer just personal. Courtney hadn't just stolen from us. She'd weaponized the system. I wasn't a grieving mother anymore. I was a suspect. And if we didn't act fast, her lies would bury me further than poverty ever had. By Friday, Brandon's lawyer had a file the size of a phone book. We sat in his office across from a man named David Chen. Stern, precise, and not the type to sugarcoat. He laid out the findings one by one, like stepping stones across a poisoned river. Courtney didn't just reroute money and forge documents, he said. She opened 3 credit cards in your name, took out a small personal loan from a regional lender, and filed 2 years of false tax returns, all with your credentials. My heart felt like it had slowed to half speed. And the IRS. You're under review, he said plainly. They've sent letters to the Sycamore address. Course you've technically failed to respond. On paper it looks like evasion. I wanted to scream, but even that would have felt too small for what I was carrying. And the house? Brandon asked, his voice brittle. David adjusted his glasses. The Lakehouse is legally in your name. That's the one clean part of this, ironically. Courtney's parents have been living there, and renovations have increased its value. Brandon clenched his jaw. They'll be out by the end of the month. They'll have to be, David replied. This is criminal fraud, federal level. We're talking about real prison time. I said nothing for a while. My hands rested in my lap, folded so tightly I couldn't feel my fingers. All I could think about was the woman who had hugged me across holiday tables and smiled while she emptied my life behind my back. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about reclaiming something I didn't even know I'd lost. My name. Comment karma, if you believe justice will prevail. And hit subscribe to see how this ends. 3 weeks later, Courtney was arrested on a quiet Thursday morning. It was raining. I remember that detail because the drops on my front porch echoed louder than the knock on the door. I didn't watch the police take her. Brandon did. He said she didn't cry, didn't scream. She just looked down at her shoes as if the ground had finally caught her. Court, she pled guilty. 18 months in federal custody. No trial, no appeals. Her lawyer called it a deal. called it mercy. The judge ordered full restitution. All assets purchased with stolen funds were frozen. The fraudulent bank accounts were shut down. The house was returned to me officially, this time without forged signatures or hidden mailing addresses. Her parents moved out within a week. They left a note behind, handwritten, apologizing. Said they hadn't known. I believed them. I met them twice. They seemed decent. Just ordinary people swept into someone else's storm. Brandon stood beside me when I signed the final documents at the county recorder's office. His hand hovered over mine, not pushing, not guiding, just there. "I should have seen it," he said softly. "You trusted your wife," I replied. "That's not a crime." "But she made it one," he whispered. I didn't say anything after that. There was nothing else to say. Had my house. Had my name back. But what surprised me most wasn't the relief. It was the quiet. Not peace exactly. Not yet. But silence without shame. And that was a start. The Lakehouse didn't feel like home at first. Even after the deed was refiled, the locks changed, and the utilities transferred to my name, I still walked through each room like a guest in someone else's life. The furniture was clean, modern. The kitchen spotless. The screened porch overlooked still water that should have soothed me. But it didn't. Not yet. I started small. New curtains in the bedroom. A second-hand rocking chair for the porch. A faded photograph of my husband Robert placed gently on the mantel. Then came the tomatoes I planted in the side garden. The basil. The wind chime near the back door. I didn't need all the money the court returned, but I kept it. Around $95,000 in total compensation, back payments, interest, more than I'd ever earned in 5 years at the courthouse. I bought better shoes, filled every prescription, and for the first time in a decade, I didn't check the gas meter before turning on the heat. Brandon came every Sunday with pastries and a new story. He no longer arrived in a rush, no longer skimmed the surface of our conversations. He stayed long enough to help me prune roses. Sometimes we didn't speak at all. We just listened to the lake breathe. "You were always trying to take care of me," I told him one afternoon. He shook his head. "I'm just sorry it took this long to figure out how." Courtney never reached out. And I didn't expect her to. Some debts are legal. Others are human. I let the courts handle the first. The second I laid down gently, like something no longer worth carrying. This house was once stolen from me. Now every breath I take inside it is mine. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more incredible true stories and let me know in the comments, what would you have done in my situation? Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.